Good afternoon, Justin Bergeron here. So I'm talking about the required documents required for the commercial check ride in preparation of the commercial check ride. Some of the documents required for the check ride is the Worthiness Certificate. I need to know not only the valid dates for it, but as well as the location of it. I need to know the aircraft registration, make sure it's there, required inspections, and airplane logbook documentation. I need to know the ADs or airworthiness directives, as well as special information bulletins or special flight permits if pertaining to flight. I need to know pilot performed preventative maintenance as well as where it's logged and that it is logged, equipment required for VFR flight, visual meteorological conditions, and then inoperative equipment, what needs to be done in order to fly with inop equipment. The minimum equipment list for the airframe, as well as the kinds of operational equipment list, records and placards. So first is the Airworthiness Certificate. It's a certificate that the FAA issues to grant an aircraft flight privileges. It's valid if all ADs are complied with and all inspections are complied with. It's issued by an FAA inspector as an airplane comes off the production line. The aircraft registration lists owners of the aircraft, owner or owners. It indicates the country of origin. It indicates the use of the aircraft, whether it's for hire, personal use, or transportation. It is a register for the N number for identification while you're flying, and it's valid for 3 years. Some required inspections, you can use the acronym AVIATE, and that gets you your ADs. You need your annual inspection, which is 12 months, your 50-hour inspection if you're for hire. Your pitot-static system needs to be inspected every 24 calendar months, your altimeters 24 calendar months, your VORs every 30 days, your transponders every 24 calendar months, and then your ELTs every year, and the battery needs to be replaced with an hour of cumulative use or after the battery's half-life. Some airworthiness directives and special airworthiness information bulletins. So ADs are legally enforceable regulations which are issued by the FAA to correct unsafe issues. There's 3 different types. There's first the Nprm, which is the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. That's something that they issue out to owners and operators of these aircraft to tell them that a rule is about to change. There's the final rule telling them that the rule has changed. And then there's an emergency AD, which is issued when they don't have time to send out the proposed rulemaking, and then the final rule, something that needs to be fixed immediately, and they just must comply with. So what they do is they define an issue that must be fixed before flight. It relates to the type of aircraft, the models affected, the certificate, even what part number it may be, as well as the time required to comply with the AD. Next is the SAIB, which is the Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin, which is an information tool to alert, educate, and recommend the aviation community as to hazards that should be fixed. Maybe it's not something that usually it's non-regulatory information, so it doesn't quite meet the airworthiness directive criteria, but it could still be something dangerous that should be fixed, even though it legally doesn't have to be fixed. So there's a few different type of special flight permits. First is the primary special flight permit, which is limiting an aircraft exclusively for pleasure and personal use, so you cannot be for hire in this aircraft. Restricted is another one where like the Forest Service could use these for contracting. You could use it for agriculture, maybe spraying, crop dusting, or even looking for wildlife. It could be advertising, so banner towing. You could survey land with this, or even weather control. So it must fly for that. The airplane must fly for that specific reason of flight. You could have multiple special flight permits, so more than one certificate to convert the plane from one category to another. So maybe you have an airplane that you're using for 2 different things, so you have 2 separate special flight permits, and you can transfer the plane from one category to another. Next is a limited special flight permit, which is usually used for surplus military planes, which are converted to civilian use. They cannot be for hire, and it's being able to fly those surplus planes. Light sport is 1,320 pounds limitation. You cannot fly at night or for hire. You cannot tow, and you're limited to 10,000 feet or 2,000 feet AGL, whichever is higher. Experimental covers home builds and kits, and these typically do not conform to a type certificate. The actual special flight permit is an aircraft that's not necessarily airworthy, but it's still safe to fly. So it can be used to fly from A to B for many reasons, such as repairs, getting it to a different repair facility where maybe your home airport doesn't have, for test flights, or even delivering. Someone just bought an aircraft and you're delivering it from the seller to the buyer. And then finally is the Provisional Special Flight Permit, which comes in Class 1, which is valid for 24 calendar months, and Class 2, 12 calendar months. And you have to conduct special purpose operations. So pilot perform preventative maintenance is covered under 14 CFR 43, and it's not allowed on 121 or 135 operations. You must own or operate the aircraft in order to qualify. You're able to remove, install, repair, service, and replace multiple components of the aircraft, including, but not limited to, here's a few examples of the landing gear, tires, shock struts, wheel bearings. You can also repair and replace safety wire and cotter keys. You can lubricate multiple components. You can replace bulbs, plugs, batteries, and even replenish fluids such as oil change. You must make all required entries, required record entries, and then you provide a description of the work performed, a date, signature, your certificate type, and number. Some VFR equipment requirements. The common acronym is A tomato flames for VFR day, and then flaps for night, and this is 14 CFR 91.205. That's your altimeter, tachometer, oil pressure, manifold pressure, your anti-collision lights, which is from 1996 on. You're required to have it during the day. Your temperature gauge, your oil temperature, fuel gauge, landing gear position indicator, your airspeed indicator, your magnetic compass, your ELT, and then your safety belt. And then at night, you need, for flaps, is fuses or circuit breakers. Your landing light, if you're for hire. You need anti-collision lights, which is after 1971. Your aircraft needs that at night. You need position lights as well as a source of electricity. And then also, you need your manufacturer required equipment. So for example, some Cirrus aircraft are equipped with parachutes, and that is a required component of flight. So if your parachute's not working, you can't fly that Cirrus aircraft, even though it's not in that generic acronym. So flying with inoperative equipment must not be required in 14 CFR 91.205, which we just went over. It must not be required on the minimum equipment list or the kinds of operation equipment list. And in order for it to be inop and used still to fly, it must be removed and placarded, or at least disabled and placarded, which could be, for example, if your autopilot's inoperative, you need to either remove the autopilot, which more commonly you'll probably just pull a circuit breaker, make sure the circuit breaker can't be pushed back in, and then placard that the autopilot's inoperative. So first is the minimum equipment list, which is approved by the FAA. It's a list for the aircraft provided by the manufacturer, and it must work in order to fly. It specifies whether it's VFR day, VFR night, IFR day, IFR night, and whether you need it, or it's recommended, or you just don't need it. And then next is the kinds of operations equipment list, which is a list of what must work for that type of flight. So like I just went over VFR day, night, IFR day, night. So for example, a standby altimeter, you don't need for VFR day, but you need it for IFR day or night. And same with attitude indicator. So next is discrepancy records and placards. An example of a discrepancy record is a magnetic compass where the error is documented, and it must be placarded, usually right around the compass, so it's easy for the pilot to find. Another discrepancy record would be in your POH you can find your true knots versus the indicated knots on the alternate static source. Inoperative equipment placards are placards that need to be installed. So for example, I talked about that inoperative autopilot, and so that's something that must be placarded. Your weight limits, so usually in your baggage area there's a weight limit that's placarded, and then also you usually almost always find your maneuvering speed as well as your N number up on your control or up on your instrument panel. That way you have that for quick reference. And so those are kind of the quick glances at the documents required for flight for VFR day, and this helps with gaining a greater understanding of what's required for the check ride. Thank you, and you have a great day.